Congress's much-hyped three-day Chintan Shivar ended in Udaipur last night with Rahul Gandhi admitting that the Congress's connection with the people is broken and that it needs to be repaired urgently. So the party has decided to undertake a Bharat Yatra from the 2nd of October this year to reconnect with people. They also announced a series of organizational reforms to bring new and young faces into leadership roles. But instead of a collective leadership handled by a parliamentary board, they've opted to have a group of advisors instead that Sonia Gandhi will choose. There also seems to be some kind of dissonance in the party on what exactly it should do when it comes to dealing with the BJP's Hindutva push. The leadership question, though, is still up in the air. Joining us now is Shashi Tharoor, Lok Sabha MP of the Congress party. Shashi Tharoor, thank you for being with us. Let me get to the leadership issue straight away. When you ended these discussions in Udaipur, are you more certain today that Rahul Gandhi is going to come back as Congress president, or is that still unresolved?
Well, that wasn't discussed, Nidhi, and in fact, I think it's important to understand that it wasn't even really on the agenda. If indeed Rahul Gandhi wishes to come back, I think it's very clear from the deliberations that there's a tremendous amount of support for him and for the Gandhi family generally within the Congress workers as a whole. But I think that given that that issue wasn't raised and that no statements were made by anybody from the Gandhi family about their intentions, everything remains open. There are still some people who believe that Rahul Gandhi is not interested in coming back to the position that he resigned from 3 years ago. And there are others who feel that his anointment is merely a formality, that he is all ready to take over. No one really knows. And I think we should wait probably for the AICC for that to become clear.
What was, according to you, then the main takeaway from this, apart from, the party saying, which is the obvious, that there's a disconnect with people, that your communication strategy needs to be revamped? What was, according to you, the big takeaway that would revamp the party?
Well, first of all, I think that the media has focused on issues which did not occupy the bulk of the members for the bulk of the time. And that's why I found slightly curious about it, because we were divided into 6 groups, and 5 of them were focusing on substantive issues of interest, we believe, to the public of this country. Whether they were political issues, social justice issues, youth and employment and labor issues, all of these kinds of matters that were before the 5-6 of the attendees, because the groups were roughly equal in size, have largely been ignored in the media coverage. And all the coverage has gone to the decisions coming out of one group, the organization group, which frankly, since I was not a member of that group, I was in the political group, I have no idea what was discussed, what was recommended, and which of their suggestions was actually retained in the final declaration. The Nav Sankalp declaration did indeed mention a number of things, including talking about the need to take the BJP on a whole bunch of political issues that matter to the people of India. Our coverage has focused, I think, on things like the reforms in the party organization, the questions of one person, one post, one family, one ticket, that kind of issue, which certainly the rest of us and 5 other committees did not spend any time on.
But I'm sure
I will say though that
but these are important. Sorry to but these are important issues. Whether it is the leadership question or we know what issues you want to take the BJP on. The question is, do you agree that there is a complete sort of disconnect, as Rahul Gandhi said, that you're not able to communicate? Your communication strategy, is kind of all over the place. I'll give you an example. Rahul Gandhi's speech was on a Sunday afternoon. If it had been the BJP, it would have been prime time.
Good point. I think his speech the timing of his speech was dictated by the fact that, you had a large number of attendees who would wish to disperse before the end of the day and catch flights out of Udaipur before these flights ended. So it was much more a question of fixing the timing given the audience in mind rather than worrying about the prime time larger audience. But I take your point. I think in all fairness, though, all your prime time news coverage did discuss what the Congress said and what Rahul Gandhi said. So I'm not sure that's entirely a problem. The bigger problem has been whether our messaging is resonating with the people.
Exactly.
And whether the people feel that we are the most effective voice for their concerns.
So,
and this is something which I think Rahul Gandhi tackled very frankly in his own remarks, saying that we have some problems here and that in some ways there's a major revamp to be done. There's going to be apparently a new integrated communications department. We'll have to see how that works. There's also going to be a new public insight department whose job is going to be to ascertain the views of the people and carry out surveys to get the party battle ready. Now, that's an interesting idea. It's also a totally new idea. How do we manage to go to the people and get accurate indications of what they think about certain stands we're taking or are about to take? That could be an interesting way forward. Obviously, at the end of the day, the party stands for a coherent set of principles. That became very apparent, I might add, in the discussions you were going after our conversation to talk about the masjid.
I was going to come to that
business.
because
we did discuss the Gyanvapi issue in our.
So what did you all decide? Because from again all the reports that emerged from the Chintan Shivir were that the Congress wasn't. I mean, there were differences of opinion about how the party should handle the BJP's Hindutva push. So, for example, on the Gyanvapi Mosque, what is the party's position? Do you believe that the Places of Worship Act is sacrosanct and needs to be respected?
Exactly. That was precisely the stand we came up with, that given the Places of Worship Act of 1991, the status quo is to be maintained. We don't want these wounds to be scratched open again. And what's important, I think, is that there was a frank discussion on everything. I mean, in the political committee, differences were debated. It wasn't that everyone just rubber-stamped some sort of party line. The party position emerged from a very frank discussion on even such things as whether the Congress party should participate in religious events and festivals as we participate in social and cultural ones. And there were some very strong and passionate views expressed on both sides of the argument. I think that was why I was moved to say that this was a robust example.
But what did you decide on that?
In action.
Is the party going to be more visible when it comes to celebrating, let's say, Hindu festivals? Is it going to wear its Hinduness on its sleeve?
No, I think the idea is very simply we show respect to the faiths of all our voters and constituents, which means we show equal respect to all religions and all festivals. I, as an MP, routinely go to the churches, the mosques and the temples in my constituency, and it is simply a way of showing respect to what my voters, my constituents hold sacred and value and respect. And showing respect is something that is an appropriate thing for a political party to do. So I celebrate Christmas, I celebrate Eid, and I celebrate every Hindu festival. And the truth is that because I'm a Hindu, when I go to a temple, I pray as a devotee. When I go to a church, I sit with respect and I listen to their prayers. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that is the kind of thing the Congress has always done. Gandhiji used to begin his prayer meetings with bhajans from Hinduism, from Psalms, from the Bible, verses from the Quran and the Granth Sahib. That kind of culture has been there in the Congress party for a very long time. But people had to discuss it and come to an acceptance of how we would put these things forward. On the question of Mandir Masjid, we are very clear. This country has more important issues on its mind. It has employment, a deep crisis of unemployment in our country. It has serious challenges of education. And these days, a terrible crisis of inflation. Food prices have become unaffordable for the Aam Aadmi.
You're absolutely right.
And these are the things that we want to tell people the government ought to be taking care of rather than employing weapons of mass distraction like the Mandir Masjid issues.
And yet they keep employing those again and again, and obviously for a lot of people they do resonate. But there is another important statement that Rahul Gandhi made yesterday which seems to have ruffled the feathers of some of your allies, because he said that regional parties lack the ideology to take on the RSS and the BJP. Now this has upset the RJD today and your friends in Jharkhand, the JMM, who are saying, what do you mean? Are you saying we don't have an ideology? So on one hand you're saying, you know, we need to do alliances, we need to be strategic about this. On the other hand, you're saying that, you know, regional parties don't have any ideology to take on the BJP. How do you square that off?
No, I think what he meant, at least what we all understood by what he meant, was that we have a national vision. We speak for and think of the country as a whole, whereas the regional party, by its very character and nature, is usually confined to one particular region or one particular interest group. So it's not that, I think, for example, much of the ideology of the Trinamool Congress or the RJD or the Samajwadi Party, or even for the most part, the DMK would be congruent with and compatible with what the Congress party stands for on many matters. But we feel that they are confined by their own nature to a particular state or region. And of course, they are free to become more nationally ambitious. But even if they were to take on a national role, they are not where the Congress party is, where we are present in every district in the country. So our ideology embraces India as a whole, and a regional party by definition is not on the same page. I think that's all that Rahul Gandhi meant. I wouldn't think that he was disparaging the ideology, because if these parties didn't have an ideology, we wouldn't be allied to them. So I think it's clear that we accept that ideologically we are prepared to be on the same page with these parties, but we think nationally and they think about their own states or their own regional interests.
Shashi Tharoor, you created quite a stir actually when you joined a dinner meeting of the so-called G23 group of Congress leaders, those who in a sense rebelled and spoken up, including Kapil Sibal, Ghulam Nabi Azad, etc. You attended one of their dinner meetings, and if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't actually done an interview since then. Why did you go to that meeting?
Because I actually think there's absolutely nothing wrong in what they specifically asked for. In fact, if you look at the spirits in which they had approached all of this, my conviction was that what they were asking for was things that many Congress people, in fact, actually raised and discussed in the Chintan Shivir as well. The proposals were all about a more collegial, more discussion-oriented, consultative political process within the party. And I think that, to my mind, that's precisely what many people have continued to ask for. And in many ways, the Congress party president has gone a long way towards acknowledging this by saying that she would actually have a consultative group to advise her.
But they wanted a parliamentary board revived. They wanted a collective leadership. They wanted the parliamentary board to be revived, and that's been shot down. So there's no collective leadership. It's the same.
Well, I mean, I think in this particular matter, I mean, I joined the party in 2008. The parliamentary board hasn't existed since 91. It was an institution that could have addressed the particular concerns of some members, because they who had experience of the parliamentary board thought it was the best way to go forward. But there's no reason to believe that the political committee advising the president couldn't do some of the things that a parliamentary board might have done. At least we'll have to see. Look, the bottom line with the entire conversation, Nidhi, is a lot of this, the cliche is true, the proof of the pudding will lie in the eating. A lot of this will depend on the implementation. I think everyone wants to see a revived Congress party. Everyone wants to see a more effective, more energized, more focused Congress party. If we see that coming out of the party in the next few months, culminating in the Bharat Jodo Yatra, which you already mentioned, then it seems to me that I think we will have a country that's up and ready to run against the excesses and the mismanagement and so on of the ruling party. But if it turns out that, in fact, nothing very much changes, then, of course, some of those who raised concerns in the past will probably be voicing them again. But right now, everyone was there in a spirit of being loyal party members who wanted very much to see the party strengthen itself, which was always the original intention of the people who signed that letter. In other words, they weren't there to undermine the party. They always felt and they always argued that they were there to strengthen the party by reforming it and to work more effectively. The party itself has taken that challenge on. Let's hope it does work more effectively.
All right, let's see. Interesting times ahead. Shashi Tharoor, thank you very much for joining us on NDTV today.
Thank you, Nidhi.